Right, my name is Sarah Robel, and this is my U.S. Immigration History Timeline Project. So the first set of events that we're looking at is 1790 to 1879, and the one that I'm going to be focusing on is the Naturalization Act of 1970. This was the initial federal law that established the eligibility for U.S. citizenship through naturalization. It was stipulated that in order to become a citizen, an individual must have resided in the United States for a minimum of 2 years and be a free white individual. The recognition of citizens' children born outside of the nation as natural-born citizens was also approved by the Congress. This act established the foundation for immigration laws, though it did have significant ethnic exclusions and racial prejudice. The next timeline that we're looking at is 1880 to 1921, and I'm going to be focusing on the Chinese Exclusion Act. Congress enacted legislation imposing a 10-year ban on Chinese laborers. Entry to the United States federal law had never before prohibited the admittance of an ethnic working group. This legislation also said that anyone who had left the U.S. already had to obtain certificates allowing them to re-enter that were pretty tough to have. This was important because it reveals the degree of immigration law discrimination and racial prejudices, along with the struggles that the Chinese people had with staying or if they wanted to leave and re-enter. The third time period that we're looking at is 1922 to 1964. I'm going to be focusing on the Bracero program in 1942. In order to solve labor shortages during World War II, the U.S. and Mexico entered into a labor arrangement, the Bracero program. This permitted temporary entry of Mexican agricultural workers into the country. Although this program did have harsh conditions for the workers, many Mexicans came with the belief that they would be able to earn higher wages or that they would learn new skills that they didn't think that they could have otherwise in Mexico. And this was extremely significant because it displays the contributions that immigrants had and still continue to give, displaying one of the numerous ways that they have been a backbone for our country and continue to be. And then the fourth time period that we're looking at is 1965 to 1990. I'm going to be talking about the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986. Congress addressed the issue of illegal immigration by granting amnesty to some of the people who had lived in the U.S. for a long period of time in order to obtain legal permanent status. This included a special expedited procedure for farm workers. Legal permanent status was granted to 2.7 million long-term residents under the IRCA, the Immigration Reform and Control Act. Additionally, penalties were implemented for employers who consciously, knowingly employed undocumented employees in order to reduce illegal employment practices. This represented a significant shift in immigration policy by acknowledging the obstacles associated with undocumented immigration and attempting to resolve them through comprehensive reform. And then the last time period is 1991 to 2020s. I'm going to be talking about the Title 42 policy in 2020. This was during the COVID-19 pandemic, and due to the fears and the health concerns that were raised, the Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, issued an order in 2020 under the U.S. Code for the immediate deportation of immigrants. With very few humanitarian circumstances, anyone caught entering the country or at the border without authorization or paperwork faced quick expulsion from the country. This policy had sparked significant moral debate, as numerous individuals were compelled to return to hazardous conditions or unsafe areas, and it was of major significance today because this was the way that the United States chose to respond to a global pandemic and how they chose to intervene with other countries as their response. And those are the 5 that I have highlighted, and I would say that one of my biggest takeaways from this is learning about all the different ways that the Naturalization Acts or the Immigration Acts have updated every few years, and how I was a little bit surprised to learn that they took some steps back, is more than I thought that they would have. rather than being as linear as I thought that it would have been. And there's such a deep-rooted history, and it really just has speaking loudly to me to see all the ways that, America has, like, put in these laws. They've been wanting immigrants, wanting them to work for them, wanting them to do all these jobs, treating them poorly, and that they actually had to raise new laws to allow them to be with their family, to allow reunification, to allow moral practices. And I think that would be my biggest takeaway from this project.